recently, she has had to teach her children not only the name of their town, but three very important names: their father's name, their paternal grandfather's name, and their paternal great-grandfather's name. And those three names together in any Palestinian town, two Palestinians, represent a family fingerprint, if you will. So everybody knows who that family is. She has said to her daughter, if we get to a checkpoint and the police want to talk to mommy, and I get out of the car for a very long time and I don't come back, you must go to the road. And if a car stops and the license plate is yellow, do not get into that car. But if the license plate is green and white, that means it's a Palestinian family. You tell them where we live, they will take you there.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to the Struggle Video News. Today we feature an interview I did with three activists who traveled to Palestine to witness the apartheid conditions on the West Bank. We start with some good news. The British High Court has told the government there that its arrests of people for supporting Palestine Action and calling them terrorists is unlawful.
It's been overturned.
Oh, there we are. You can go home now.
It vindicates everything we've been doing to defend our civil liberties.
I've been arrested 5 times for terrorism and kind of lost my job.
The government will appeal.
So know that what this represents today is precisely the principles that the British state claims to represent: justice, democracy, liberty.
It's probably the happiest morning I've had in a very long time.
Proof that direct action is not terrorism, that resistance to genocide is not terrorism, and that people in this country have a role to play in the defense of Palestinians.
It's a tribute to people in Britain who are willing to be arrested and face huge penalties, including big prison time. Over 2,000 were arrested. It's a victory for direct action. Bully for them. Ship workers across 21 major ports in Europe and the Mediterranean shut down operations in a coordinated day of action for Palestine. Under the call, "Port workers do not want war." You can hear them saying, "Arrest Netanyahu, free Palestine." One of the organizers was Chris Smalls, who spoke in Hartford recently, and you saw on this TSVN program. More good news. At the end of January, Dr. Abu Safiya, the doctor who headed the Kamal Adwan hospital in Gaza and who had been abducted and imprisoned by Israel, was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Go to the site freedoctorabusafiya.org to see the nominating statement. The nomination will be celebrated at the Palestine Museum US on Sunday, March 1st at 3 p.m. Details will be forthcoming. Every effort has to be made to get him out of the Israeli torture prisons. Time is of the essence. It was announced on February 13th that Palestinian medic Hatem Rayan, who was arrested along with Dr. Abu Safiya on December 27th, 2024, has died in Israeli custody. numbers of those Iranians massacred by the Iranian regime keep rising. 7,000 seems to be the lowest number of those killed. All support to the Iranian working people who were the victims of the massacres. Trump, sensing an opportunity for spoil, has sent a fleet to approach Iran, either to attack or to peacefully force Iran to give him its oil, hoping that looting campaign will fail. Good analysis on the site peace.org, and also this article on New Politics. A recent article in the New York Times said that a portion of MAGA is steadily opposing the long-standing government claim that Israel attacked the USS Liberty in 1967 in an accident. In my comment, I pointed out that this view is not just held by the far right, and linked to the Independent Commission report by retired Admiral Maurer and other top military figures. Scan this code to go to that report and other comments about the attack on the Liberty, including an article I wrote 20 years ago called Arrest Robert McNamara. Respect for the survivors of the Liberty is not just some right-wing extremist cause, but the need for basic justice in the face of Zionist hysteria. Now, from my interview with eyewitnesses who traveled to the West Bank in December, I'll be speaking with three people who recently, about a month ago, came back from a trip to Palestine sponsored by the Catholic Workers. And we'll be speaking to Victoria McAvoy of New Haven, who she said heard the call from the organization Sabil, the Palestinian Christian organization, and felt she had to go on this trip. Jessica Sun, a software engineer who is on the road to becoming a Catholic nun, and Mark Colville from the Amistad Catholic Worker Organization, where he is active. Good afternoon to all of you.
Hi, Stan.
See you, Stan.
Thanks for hosting.
So, Victoria, you have had a very, let's say, dramatic experience in Taiba with one particular family. Let's jump right in with that. Could you describe it?
Sure. This is the thing that for me defines what I learned on this entire trip about the oppression and the uncertainty and the cruelty that's being perpetrated on Palestinians, the Bedouins, the Muslims, the Christians. This young woman who had been born and raised in the United States, her name is Morgan. Her family lives in Ramallah, and they came to speak to us in Taipei about a number of things. But the story that she told I found so haunting, about how when the two parents travel with their two very young children, ages maybe 7 and 5, they travel separately so that if something happens to one of them, the children will still have at least one parent to come home to. And recently, she has had to teach her children not only the name of their town, but 3 very important names: their father's name, their paternal grandfather's name, and their paternal great-grandfather's name. And those 3 names together in any Palestinian town, to Palestinians, represent a family fingerprint, if you will. So everybody knows who that family is. She has said to her daughter, if we get to a checkpoint and the police want to talk to mommy, and I get out of the car for a very long time and I don't come back, you must go to the road. And if a car stops and the license plate is yellow, do not get into that car. But if the license plate is green and white, That means it's a Palestinian family. You tell them where we live, they will take you there to the police station. And when you get there, you will tell the police the 3 family names, and they will find Daddy so he can come and get you. And with false bravado, of course, she says to her daughter, and I will come home as soon as I can. And that is the daily, hourly, moment-to-moment reality for Palestinians in occupied Palestine. They can go nowhere freely. They are always being watched and listened to. They are deprived of the most basic resources. Imagine living near one of these settlements full of people from Brooklyn, New York, who've never set foot in Palestine, and they have swimming pools. And you, a Palestinian whose water is being tapped from beneath you to be sold back to you, you get 7 hours a week of running water.
7 hours
So
a whole week.
I am 7 hours, and everybody's got tanks that they try their best to fill. But for fun, some of the settlers go around and shoot holes in some of these water tanks on roofs. So I don't know that the word oppression can even do justice to what I personally, and I think we as a group, witnessed and heard over and over and over again in Palestine.
And let's be
I'll leave it
clear for our viewers, this is the West Bank. This is not Gaza. This is not Hamas with its hostages and all that. This is the West Bank.
We were near the border to Gaza, but of course, no one is allowed to approach Gaza. We would have if we could have. So we did spend our time in many different locations in the West Bank.
So let's go back to the start. Perhaps Jessica or Mark. So when did you go over there? How long were you there? And what was sort of your itinerary?
So we went all over the West Bank. We visited Bethlehem, Jerusalem, Taipei, Massafuerte, the area well made famous through the Oscar-winning documentary No Other Land. And specifically, we spent time at Hair, where there is desperately needed international presence, and they continue to be under attack. We visited Hebron as well, and we spent time throughout the surrounding areas, meeting with civil society peacemakers across identities, across religions, to talk about what they're experiencing and the reality on the ground today.
What's coming to mind for me, as maybe an experience that among so many beautiful and heartbreaking experiences that kind of define the experience, the trip. We were in Care. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Well, essentially in the Hebron Hills outside of Hebron. There's lots of farms, and mostly with olive trees and sheep and such. And the ones that have been able to survive all of this apartheid and oppression and genocide, really, and ethnic cleansing, are ones that have, typically they make international connections and they try to get international solidarity. Care is an example of that. And as I said, this is a farm that, it's literally, these farms are in the same families going back thousands of years. The land is not, to say that the land belongs to them doesn't capture it. The land is part of their family. Okay. In fact, that's literally how it was described to us several times. And this is one example of that. Now, again, I had been there in 2024 with a Sabeel delegation in September. And at that point, they were under extreme pressure from the surrounding illegal settlers, the vigilante, violent settlements that keep Care under constant siege. They were basically, and I'm talking about the year previous, at that point they were basically surrounded by these illegal settlements. And the incursions were on a daily basis, in terms of damaging things, destroying cars, terrorizing children, striking fear into parents and mothers particularly, and just these random acts of violence. Um, about 6 months or half a year later, again, which would be half a year before we went on this delegation, there was a man named Auda Khalil, who was a well known and respected community leader, neighborhood leader, and organizer, who had, he was again another person who moved in this society with a nonviolent ethic um, and really trying, a person completely dedicated to his community. And I remember seeing on YouTube, again, when I was back here about 6 months before we went again in December, um, I witnessed on YouTube his murder. It was filmed. He was there was literally a deranged illegal settler armed with arms coming from the United States, who had previously been arrested for acts of violence, but the arrests never mean anything when it's an Israeli, and the man was allowed to roam free. Well, I watched a video of him, in confrontation and argument with Audet, and the guy pulls out a gun and literally shoots him dead. Well, when we went back in December, again, the experience was that his little boy is he's about the age of my grandson who just turned 3. A little toddler was in the village with his uncle, and his uncle is the brother of Audet, and this was Audet's son. And so we were playing with him, and we were walking around, and they showed us the exact spot where his father had been killed. And there's all kinds of memorials to this good man. Anyway, as we went through the day, we took, as internationals, we took a walk all the way around, particularly the perimeter of this village, because again, and by the way, I said that they had already been under siege the year before. Well, now they had half of the buildings that they had before. The others had been destroyed, and the illegal settlers, with the assistance of the Israeli army, had set up, you know, basically these dwellings that are right at the fence of where the village is. It's a constant threat. Anyway, the murderer, whose name I wish I had written it down, his name is well known. He was roaming around. He was there. Okay. He had after killing this man, after killing Audet, he was again arrested and then released. I don't even think it was a day later he was released, and there are no charges pending. It's complete impunity. And the way that this man, I mean, he was driving around on trucks, and is just the arrogance and the impunity, just it reigns in this society. And it was very clear, and this was a very poignant example of it, that there is no recognition of the humanity of the Palestinian people. The Israeli society, is a complete disaster at this point.
Yeah.
Everybody is depressed or suicidal, and it's just a project that is going into hell very rapidly.
Back to the mundane. What was it like coming in? You went from Jordan, maybe Jessica or Victoria?
Yes, so in December, with the Catholic Worker Delegation. This was my third time in Palestine, Israel. So my first time was in 2022, where I flew into the Tel Aviv airport. And I had a really bad experience there, as a lot of travelers had been noting throughout the experience in trying to use this Tel Aviv airport. On my way out, especially, I went through some intense interrogation. I had my bag searched, everything taken out in front of me. I was patted down for no real reason. They couldn't give me an apparent reason. And so I definitely recommend going through the Jordan crossing, although that can add a whole extra day to one's travel. The same day that we were there, or the same time that we were there in December 2025, there were also 1,000 US Christian Zionist pastors there on fully funded trips with the Zionist organization Friends of Zion. And the entire time these 1,000 US Christian pastors were there, they did not meet with a single Palestinian Christian.
Did they hold you up for an unreasonable time going over, or did they just sort of process you through?
Well,
We had a bit. Go ahead, Mark, please.
oh yeah, we had anticipated that happening, and so we had done extensive preparation both here in the States and then when we gathered there in Jordan. Um, as it turned out, we got through back and forth relatively trouble-free. There was an incident with a tiny statue of the Buddha, which was randomly in somebody's suitcase, and that became a big point of problem, not for the Israeli checkpoint, but for the Jordanian one. Which anyway, we that delayed us for about an hour and a half. Um, but that being said, we kind of got we got in and out pretty quickly. But we again, and by the way, I'm aware of the fact that I believe it was the day before we got there, that there was another delegation from where I'm not exactly sure, but it was a political, like government officials, I believe. Was it from London, maybe? I don't remember.
Canadian
So,
parliamentarians. Canadian
okay,
parliamentarians.
thank you. And they were asked by the Israelis, and this is the story I got. They were asked by the Israelis the purpose of their trip, and they said something along the lines to observe the situation, the political situation, and to get a sense of what the Palestinian situation is here. They were all turned away; they weren't allowed in. Um, literally, that's you go there as Jessica was explaining. If you're a Christian Zionist, it's like red carpet time. But anybody that's going there to find facts about what's going on, um, there's a reason how many 300 journalists have been murdered there in the past couple of years. That all of the so-called facts on the ground, the Israeli government is commandeering that and claiming, they process all of what happens. And so the only real messages that we're getting here in the United States, aside from people who have visited and been eyewitnesses, is propaganda, designed to kill Palestinians.
So, Victoria,
It's also
where did you all go after you got through the checkpoint? What was the first area you went to?
Well, let me just, if I may add to what Mark just said, it's very important to think about the word ceasefire, supposedly in October in Gaza. No such. It has not stopped. The killing has not stopped. The dying has not stopped. Just last week, 3 Palestinian journalists were assassinated in Gaza. And my grandmother heart has such a hard time thinking about how many infants and children have died and continue to die in Gaza because it is freezing cold. They are living in tents. The tents are flimsy. They get wet because it's also the rainy season, and these children die of exposure. We awakened on our delegation one morning. I believe we were in the holy city of Bethlehem, and we awakened to the news that overnight 13 infants and children had frozen to death in Gaza. And add to this the knowledge that there are sturdier tents, not that anyone should have to live in a tent, okay? But there are much sturdier tents sitting on trucks waiting to be delivered, not allowed into Gaza.
The caravans.
Do we, at the caravans, exactly, and how do we justify this? This is the United States taxpayers' money being sent for these horrific things to occur. And meanwhile, guess who is the 8th largest exporter of weapons in the world? 8th largest exporter of weapons in the world is Israel. Let that sink in. So they are selling things that we're sending them, and they apparently are selling to both sides in a number of conflicts. There is evidence to support that.
Let's get back to things you saw personally.
Things we saw. Towns we visited, the holy city of Bethlehem, which for 3 years now has not lit their Christmas tree. They have been almost devoid of tourists and visitors, hundreds of thousands of whom used to flock to the holy city of Bethlehem during the Christmas season. Now, okay, science tells us that Jesus was not born in December, but that's when we celebrate. That's when most Christians around the world, December, some Orthodox, some in January, but that time of year. And we had the privilege of being there for the first lighting of the Bethlehem Christmas tree. That we were among the few internationals who were privileged to be in Bethlehem this past year, 2025, Christmas time, for the lighting of the Christmas tree for the first time in 3 years. Very meaningful to the whole society there.
That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for the Struggle Video News.